Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. When an individual attacks another individual, society demands that he or she is punished. When that attack is of a sexual nature, the punishment, of course, should be somewhat harsher. If it's penetrative, it should be very harsh punishment indeed. And when the victim is a child, it should be the ultimate sanction. Personally, I'm in favour of the rope, but at the very least, it should be life in prison. But under changes to the justice system brought in by the SNP, and in particular by Humza Yousaf himself as Justice Minister, when a person commits the R of a child, he's then given 270 hours of community service. He doesn't do a day in prison. He gets off with working every Saturday for about 4 months. Is this justice? Is this fair? Can the stomach of the public handle such things? If you are someone who votes SNP, please look at your daughters, look at your nieces, look at your younger sisters and ask, is 270 hours of community service really worth their safety? I don't think so. And I'm sure that 99% of people out there watching this video don't think so. But that's what you get with the SNP. Let's look at this article. It is not good reading, and I do apologise in advance, but what else can I do? It is the world we find ourselves in, and it is a terrible, terrible place. Here goes. So, fury as man 21 who R'd a 13-year-old in park walks free as he is deemed too young to be sent to prison and is only made to carry out 270 hours of unpaid work in an insult to his victim after the SNP justice reforms. Sean Hogg found guilty of R-ing this vulnerable teenager in Midlothian in Scotland, and the judge said the age of the perpetrator at the time, who was 17, had to be taken into account because of the laws brought in by the SNP under Humza Yousaf as Justice Minister at the time. So a judge has sparked outrage after allowing a man who did this to a 13-year-old girl to walk free from court because he is too young to be jailed. And no, he isn't. He's 21. He needs to go into a big boy prison where he will then suffer hopefully the same punishment as he meted out to the girl that he did this to. It would be a lovely piece of karma if he had, unexpected penises where they shouldn't be. Sean Hogg, 21, was found guilty of pouncing on the vulnerable teenager at Dalkeith Country Park in Midlothian in Scotland. But Judge Lord Lake said the age of this man, who was 17 at the time of the attack, had to be taken into account when passing sentence. It means Hogg of Hamilton in Lanarkshire will only have to carry out 270 hours of unpaid work. 270 hours is about every Saturday for about 3.5, nearly 4 months. Now, there is no way that is a suitable punishment for what this man did. And to say he's too young to go to prison is ridiculous. He's too young at 17 to go into a man's prison. He goes into a youth custody centre. And on his 18th birthday, he gets moved into a cell with the big boys. He goes into a man's prison where he serves life because the victim was 13. He knew. He was 17, fine. But he knew. He gets life. Anyway, prosecutors were yesterday weighing up whether to challenge the sentence if it is considered unduly lenient. And I think 99.9% of people in Scotland will consider it unduly lenient. You don't let people get away with doing this to a child. And yet that's what the courts have done. Because that's the sentencing guidelines laid down by the SNP. Opposition leaders described it as an insult to the teenage victim. Now here he is. Here's Sean Hogg. So look at that face. Know who he is. Know where he lives. Hamilton. Know exactly what he is. And I say to the good people of Hamilton, watch him. Every day, point to him, say out loud what he is. Make sure he knows that you know. Make his life hell. Don't do anything physical to him. Just make sure that everybody knows who and what he is. Sarah Brindley, the chief executive of the R Crisis Scotland, said, "This is an extremely serious case and we are shocked that this perpetrator has not received a custodial sentence. Given the gravity of this crime and the fact it was tried at the High Court, this sentence appears to us to be worryingly lenient. It hands out a licence. It hands out a licence to anyone to go and do these things to children because it is deemed trivial by the courts." Our thoughts are with the survivor of this crime. For survivors of any SV, it can be very difficult to see reports of the convicted perpetrators walking free from court. Court papers state that Hogg attacked the school-age girl on various occasions between March and June 2018. This isn't even a one-off. This is a series of attacks. They also say he carried out an assault by threatening the teenager and pulling down her clothing. He then seized her by the wrist and forced her to commit a sex act before going on to R, the youngster. You know what he'd made her do. As well as being ordered to carry out unpaid work, Hogg was put under supervision and placed on the SO's register for 3 years. He should be on that register for the rest of his hopefully very short life. He perpetrated a whole series of attacks on this child, and he walks free thanks to the SNP, thanks to the justice reforms brought in by the SNP. And I hope the supporters of the SNP are feeling particularly proud of themselves and what they are doing. Under new court guidance, criminals under the age of 25 are treated more leniently because of their alleged brain immaturity. Not their penis immaturity, apparently. The guidelines were drawn up by the controversial Scottish Sentencing Council, which was set up by the SNP Scottish Government and led by Lady Dorian, the Lord Justice Clerk. At Hogg's sentencing at the High Court in Glasgow yesterday, Lord Lake said that he had considered guidelines on offenders under the age of 25. He also concluded that prison would not contribute to the thug's rehabilitation and took into account the fact that he was a first offender. He wasn't a first offender though, was he? When he committed the R on this child, that wasn't his first offence. He had a whole series of offences before he got to that point. He should have been prosecuted for each of them separately. And you had a trial for that one, and then a trial for that one. By the time he gets to the R at the end, he would have been a 12 times convicted, S offender. He should be doing the rest of his worthless life in prison instead of walking the streets all smug and as yet physically fine. If this offence, if committed by an adult over 25, you attract a sentence of 4 or 5 years. To be honest, I think if a 25-year-old R's a 13-year-old and Scotland says that 4 years is enough, and don't forget you probably only do 2, I don't think that Scotland has got a very good justice system. I think the Scottish justice system needs a radical overhaul, and it needs to maybe put zeros on the end of their sentencing guidelines. It is a joke. But we know why, don't we? We know why this is kind of there. Last night, the Scottish Government Justice spokesman, Jamie Green, said the sentence places the well-being of Hogg above that of the schoolgirl he attacked. He added the lack of prison sentence is a total insult to the young teenage victim in the case. It once again reaffirms how misguided the SNP's sentencing guidelines are in reality and how judges' hands are tied as a result. And while this dangerous offender committed the offence when he was 17, the policies agreed to by the SNP ministers mean that under 25-year-olds are now routinely wrapped in cotton wool. By the time I was 25, I was in and out of the army, I was a father, and I had a mortgage. I don't consider myself to be particularly immature. And yet, according to the Scottish legal system, I would be treated as a child if I went out and committed that act on a 13-year-old. The Scottish legal system needs a massive overhaul, and it needs to begin on day one with a massive vote. A vote to vote out the SNP and to put someone in charge of the legal system who actually gives a damn about the children of Scotland. This is disgusting. Yesterday, a spokesman for the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service said, as with all cases, the Crown will consider the sentence and give consideration to whether it may be unduly lenient, which of course we all know it is. A Scottish Government spokesman said decisions on sentencing in individual cases are taken by the independent court within the legal framework where they consider all the facts and circumstances, and the Scottish Government does not comment on or nor intervene in individual cases. It will not comment on the fact that these sentencing guidelines were brought in by that same government. This aura of children is on the streets because of that government. The government of Scotland, the SNP government, have released the aura of a child onto the streets because they do not consider children to be worthy of justice. I'm coming up. There are many reasons to disagree with what the SNP stand for. You may not want particularly independence, for example. You may have a problem with them because of their economic stance. You may have a problem with them with their gender bills. You may have a problem with them with their ecological standpoint. There are many different points at which you could have a problem with the SNP. I think there's one problem with the SNP that even its own supporters would have a problem with, and that is the treatment of children who are attacked like this. For any person, any perpetrator, regardless of their age, to be walking free from court after R-ing a child, it's just not acceptable. There's words I want to say, but if I said them, I would be off YouTube quick as you like. Let's just say it is extremely not acceptable. Now, why would Humza Yousaf, as Justice Minister and now First Minister, sort of agree to these things? They happened under his bailiwick. Well, of course, he admires he who must not be named, and he who must not be named had a penchant, proclivity for 9-year-old girls, after all. So it's hardly surprising, and given the problems they've had up and down the length of the country, in the United Kingdom as a whole, with certain people who liked, let's just say he who must not be named, and their proclivity with young children up and down the country, and the police did nothing about them, of course. And there'll be a video about that probably later today. It's hardly surprising that the person responsible for sentencing guidelines when it comes to this kind of thing makes it very easy for people to get away with doing this to your children. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, I say at the end, if you're an SNP supporter, look at what they're doing, then look at your daughters, your nieces, your sisters, and ask, are they safe? Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell for future output. Leave a like. Please, God, leave a comment. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, guard your children, and goodbye.